Pokemon is the second largest franchise in the world with a net worth of about $18 billion. There are Pokemon fans all over the world, yet few of them know the real history of the games they love. Pokemon is an RPG in which you capture creatures called Pokemon. Pokemon live in the oceans, the land, and the sky. It is your goal to catch as many Pokemon as you can and become a true Pokemon master. The first Pokemon games were released in Japan in 1996. The game exploded in Japan, which led to the first US releases, Pokemon Red and Pokemon Blue, to be released soon after 1998. These original games gave birth to 6 more generations of Pokemon games so far, and countless spin-offs. In fact, there used to be only the 151 originals, but now there are over 800 Pokemon. Even after all this time, 21 years to be exact, Pokemon continues to be a worldwide phenomenon. Pokemon is still relevant today because it brings the world together. Today, I will be joined by the Pokemon Master Jackson.
Hello.
First, we'll be discussing the origins of Pokemon.
The man who thought up the idea of Pokemon was Satoshi Tajiri.
He thought up of the idea because he liked to catch bugs as a child, and he wanted to let the whole world experience what it was like to catch bugs.
The game was heavily influenced by a show named Ultra 7. So Darsh, why was Pokemon influenced by this show?
Well, Tajiri got the idea of Pokemon and Pokeballs from this show. This is because giants used monsters and kept them in capsules and used them in battle, which is almost exactly like Pokemon. At first, Nintendo didn't really understand Tajiri's idea of Pokemon. They thought it wouldn't be very successful.
After 6 failed attempts to pitch the idea, Shigeru Miyamoto stepped in and helped Tajiri pitch it to Nintendo.
Pitch means they basically announced the idea to Nintendo. Nintendo finally got it, but since it took this many attempts, Tajiri had to work many unpaid nights. Game Freak was almost driven into bankruptcy, and many employees quit their jobs.
Now we'll be talking about the evolution of Pokemon.
So you mean how Pokemon evolve at different levels and different times of the day?
No, I mean how the game itself evolved.
Oh, right. The first way Pokemon has evolved upon their games is by introducing so many more new Pokemon.
In fact, the number of Pokemon went from 151 to over 800 now.
And it's not just that more Pokemon have been added. The designs and backstories have also become more and more complex.
For instance, the Pokemon in Gen 1 were all basic and based off real-life things. Now the Pokemon are more creative and fantasized.
The Pokemon world really has grown.
Another way Pokemon has evolved is the consoles it's on.
Yeah, when it was first released, Pokemon could only be found on the Game Boys, but now it's expanded to almost every single handheld and normal console out there.
The only consoles you can't find Pokemon on are the PlayStations and the Xboxes.
Yup. Expanding to different consoles has really grown the franchise because now people with all sorts of devices can play Pokemon games.
The final way Pokemon has evolved is by adding new features into the game.
One of these new features is wireless communication. Now this has become possible by transferring Pokemon games to the DSs, which allow you to communicate wirelessly. So this has also made the game much more interactive with fans because now they can all play together without actually having to be right next to each other.
Another way Pokemon has evolved is by adding Pokemon-Ami. This was added in Generation 6. It's basically where it shows an image of your Pokemon on the screen and you can play and interact with it. You can take them to mini-games and it just makes the game much more interactive with your Pokemon.
The last way is something called Super Training. Super Training makes your Pokemon stronger and it's become a big hit among competitive Pokemon fans. No matter how far Pokemon has come, no game is perfect. So now we'll be discussing some problems with the Pokemon games.
One problem with Pokemon games is that the main platform they are on, DSs, are dying out.
This is because almost everyone has a smartphone, which are basically like consoles that can fit right into your pocket. Handhelds don't even have normally the best graphics or sound as a smartphone. Next problem with the Pokemon games. People have gotten bored with the same type of plot/story and the playstyle of each game. Basically, in each game, you fight an evil team, you win 8 badges, and then you become the Pokemon champion. Pokemon Sun and Moon were attempts to fix this by removing the gym aspect of the game and adding trials, which are basically like gyms except different.
The final thing that is wrong with the Pokemon games is that complex game mechanisms are not explained at all. Some of these would include friendship and affection.
Yeah, a lot of people trash Pokemon Sun and Moon for having way too many introductions and explanations, but the truth is these games actually need more introductions and explanations. These game mechanics are not explained at all, and you wouldn't ever know about them unless you were a professional Pokemon player.
So Jackson, why is Pokemon so popular even after 21 years?
Well, one reason is they keep adding new games, each with new features, new Pokemon, and new stories. Another reason Pokemon is still so popular is because it's added many mobile games such as Pokemon Go and Pokemon Duel.
Pokemon Go, if you remember a while ago, was one of the most popular games on the App Store, and people all over the world had it.
Pokemon Duel was added recently, and it was basically chess, but with Pokemon.
Another reason Pokemon is still so popular is because they have remade older games. So Jackson, how does remaking older games make games more popular?
Well, many older fans of Pokemon want to remember what it was like when they were younger playing the original games, and remade games can help them do this.
Lastly, we will be discussing Pokemon spin-off games. Pokemon spin-off games are basically Pokemon games that are not part of the main series, but they are still Pokemon games.
So first we'll be talking about some of the first spin-off games.
One of these would include Pokemon Pinball. Pokemon Pinball is basically pinball, but with Pokemon.
So that was really popular, and there were actually 4 or 5 Pokemon pinball games, but eventually they died out. Next is a Pokemon game called Pokemon Dash. Again, it was just like what it sounds like. It's like car racing, except it's Pokemon themed. You race Pikachus and Charmanders and all that stuff across various places on Earth. And next would be Hello Pikachu. Hello Pikachu was an interesting game. Basically, there was a Pikachu who you could talk to, and it wasn't very successful. It was meant to characterize Pikachu's popularity in the Pokemon world, but it wasn't all that good.
Now we will be discussing popular Pokemon spin-off series.
The first of these is Pokemon Ranger. Pokemon Ranger is where you basically go out in the wild and you catch Pokemon using this thing called a Ranger gadget. You catch Pokemon by drawing circles in them. You draw circles by them with this Ranger gadget, and they become part of your team. You use these Pokemon to get through obstacles, help out your friends, and eventually defeat an evil boss.
This is arguably the most popular Pokemon spin-off series, Pokemon Go.
So go, Jackson, get it? Because, it's Pokemon. Okay, I'll stop.
Pokemon Go is basically where you had to go around in the real world using your smartphone and catch Pokemon. Pokemon Go came out last year for mobile devices.
It became the first game on the App Store and almost immediately, and it was really, really fun.
I want to be the very best, like no one.
Jackson, why are you singing the Pokemon theme song?
Because it's a Pokemon podcast, duh.
But you have a horrible singing voice. Okay, you know what? It's okay. But Jackson, this is where you have to leave me.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Pokemon gives people all over the world a common passion. Through these games, people from all sorts of different cultures have become good friends. In conclusion, Pokemon is a huge franchise that shows no sign of slowing down. While some people think that Pokemon is outdated and only for little kids, the truth is that anyone can feel the joys of catching and battling with Pokemon. Pokemon brings people from around the world together.
Inspiration.